Freud's standard edition has been retranslated by a South African man who is also, all of the volumes are underway, who is also a practicing neurologist. And he's very interesting because he does see psychoanalysis as a science. And I'm interested in these questions. So I was going to, try to frame it not only in terms of the movements and some of the concepts that I still find very relevant, and we can read sections of, Sartre's project for the existential psychoanalysis, how that played out. Secondly, how it was used by the practitioners in the United States. Thirdly, how it was taken up by Lang and Cooper in terms of alternative methods of treatment in the 70s in Tavistock Clinic, how Foucault learned from this, in terms of the history of madness. And then, of course, the Deleuze-Guattarian moment of the schizoid analysis, which was very much part, if you will, of the modern, capitalism and schizophrenia, where it went. So, and then, I'd like to look at, again, at, the questions around psychoanalysis and the scientificity, of the discipline in a way to go back. I certainly can comment on the Frankfurt School and Michael Schneider's critique of that. So I'm looking, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward and kind of excited about returning to these subject matters because it does follow you need a therapeutic care in this world at this point. And where do you really go with it? There's a lot of weapons out there, but we don't seem to be able to really use them effectively all the time. I mean, I have this thing in the classroom when I try to turn it into, an existentialia that I'm very interested. I have my students now write a profile so I get to know who they are, right? Yeah, so I'm begun to try to understand, where they are, where they're coming from, what their world is like, in a way. And again, I think this is very important for building community, especially in the educational institutions, which have completely failed in terms of these matters, in my opinion. Yeah. So anyway, I have a lot of questions and a lot of thoughts about this, but I'll try to put together something very coherent for the next, 4 to 6 months. We usually go, 10 sessions minimally. And I plan to record what I do in Greece, which will be a presentation on the anti-Oedipus as a moment in the history of psychiatry and Marxism and psychoanalysis, how they come together at some levels. The more I think about it, and I guess the older I get, and I kind of come out of both traditions, the Freudianism and the phenomenological psychology. Phenomenology has this real advantage of really just dealing with phenomena and not having any a priori constructs to impose upon the therapeutic situation. They're always just reading the phenomena in the reduction, etc. Of course, they're constituting it, but they're more interested in how the patient or the analyson, if you want to say, constitutes the world. So it begins with world and worlding versus drives and dreams and these kind of things. So I'd like to make those distinctions going forward. Not that one's better than the other, but it'd be interesting to engage this. And also, another thing I have in mind is Foucault's Dream and Existence. He translated this and did a commentary, and I think I told you that it was the case study of Ludwig Binswager's case study of Abby Warburg, the founder of the Warburg Institute, who was having dreams of swastikas, in the 1920s. So, and it was very, 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 yeah, and his father and his brother were the Warburg, S.G. Warburg and Company, in Wall Street, which was an extremely prominent Jewish investment banking house. And the brother said, "Okay, what do you want?" He said, I want a library. So they built the Warburg Institute, of which Ernst Cassirer did the anti-Dewey Decimal System, a new kind of classification in a library. If you're ever in London, you should go see this place. It's remarkable. It's in Bloomsbury. It's five stories, and you see all kinds of extremely rare manuscripts. You know, the Renaissance art. Panofsky put this together along with Cassirer. You know, it's a who's who of German Jewish intellectuals who actually made this work. Yeah, and to me, this is my, despite the French leanings and all this, this is my special, thinking is really for the Panofskys and the Caceres, and of course, yeah, some of the other students of some students of Heidegger, not Heidegger himself as a man, but Heidegger certainly as a thinker still, I think, gives us critical weapons. But that's a long story. But anyway, I mean, I can hear from you. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying what I can, what I know, and to build as much as I can upon this. I'm trying to get the Institute to write more, and I'm the one who needs to initiate this. So I thought what I would do. I mean, I have a file that's about 200 pages just on this course. So I'll try to synthesize this for everybody, and engage as much as I can where we started and send it around before the next stuff going out. I promise I'll do that. I have a lot of notes here and commentary. So just to go back, and I know Patrick's not coming tonight. Josh is busy. Sean O'Mara, our friend who absorbs, he told me he's going to bed at about 8 o'clock and waking up at 3 in the morning, and he can't break the pattern. So he'd fall asleep unless it's outside. So he wants me to go back in person next time, to go back to LIU for some of these classes so he can get out of the house and stay up. So who knows what's going on? I mean, bears hibernate, as you know, right? And so and Phil, you're lucky you're not in New York. It's been a real cold spell here. And the New York
Yeah, no,
don't like it.
I,
Luckily, I have a Montreal experience for many years, and it doesn't really hit me so bad. But I'm kind of laughing at them. Oh, it's so cold, and
So
I'm thinking this
cold.
is a normal day in Montreal in February. But anyway, yeah, yeah.
yeah. No,
Minus
I've
six is
been
mild.
Where
in
are you, the barrel? Where are you? 69 degrees?
Oh no, we've been 43.
43, right? That's what I
Last week
thought. Yeah.
was 43. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's mild today. It's about
Okay.
25. Mm.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
yeah, well, it's been pretty pleasant in California actually. I mean, it's cloudy today, but and it may rain tomorrow, but
Yeah.
good deal.
Yeah. So what's interesting me here is again, if I could go back to this just for a little while, the communities of care that could be, constituted. I know this has been on Zoom ever since the pandemic, right? For the most part, most of these sessions, and I certainly appreciate everybody being here. I think we've covered a lot and done a lot here, and what's underway right now is Arto, who you all know, Artinian, has actually transcribed the first of the Heidegger lectures that I did before the online stuff in 2017 and 18. There are 21 sessions of very close reading of Being and Time. So I've gotten the transcriptions. I mean, these are like software that reproduce. Of course, this is going to take a massive effort to edit them. Daddy Doc comes out as Daddy Duck, or anyway, it's very funny. I'm sure you would appreciate that. Yeah.
He's
And
got to
I mean,
train
it's
his
really
AI
some
a little
funny
bit
moments
better.
here. Yeah, I'm having a field day with it. But anyway, I'm one of the projects I want to, tackle then is to transpose those. That's the first of a group, but there are many, many things out there. And now that the software is there, the real idea is to get the editing done and then put this out in form that people can actually read in print and have a good editing thing, and just a series of lectures, if you will, given by the Institute with participants. Yeah, yeah, and so anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I have it here. It's on my desk, and I've done about 12 pages. He tells me it's well over 1,200 to 1,300 pages at least.
Whoa.
So there we go. Yeah. So I guess my rambling style.
Only 1,190 to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've never known you, Michael, to be at a loss for words, you know.
No, I don't have a loss for that. I don't have a loss for words. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's something. Yeah, I always talk back. Yeah, yeah. That was the thing. Early in childhood, I always talked back. There's an authority streak, not only authoritarian, but even an anti-authority. Until I was told by a therapist, Mr. Pelias, it's much better to become an authority, and then you can be all anti-authority you want to be. And I took that one to heart. That I learned. Be better than the authorities. So anyway. So yeah, I'm interested in this community of care. So this time around, going back to Heidegger, the being in time, and I'm doing a group of this in Montreal. I was asked to join. It's actually three people there have written books on Heidegger,
Yeah.
but somehow I'm in the position of leading the discussion. But anyway, um, chapter 6 of Being in Time, care as the being of design. And for Heidegger, we are care, right? And he looks at the primordial totality, when we really think about this as care. Now, of course, we have to ask the question, what is care? What is called caring in Spiegler's sense. So I thought we did a good job of looking at care, both as concern, anxiety being the attunement for care in the beginning, something we forget, the relationship between our anxieties, right? And anxiety in terms of being towards death, which is very fundamental. Yeah. And then how does one get again to care in terms of its phenomenological interpretation of where we are? Or what I like about Heidegger is the concrete placement. We are there being, right? We are there, right? In a sense, not just be the here now as in the Ram Baba Das sense, but in the sense of we are really there, right? We are there as being, right? And its location, it's really very nice. It's a placement. And again, we're really in some senses with Heidegger, the first step would be to do this, descriptive phenomenology, but also a topology, a place of care, a topology of care. And I think this is a very good first step in, say, a course like this, where we began with possibility is higher than actuality, or is it, right? In a sense, this is the old thesis about being. And of course, demand the impossible, Che Guevara. There are combinations that you can play off of that. But really the question of this topology of care and how it works. And then, of course, we talked about this somewhat the first couple of weeks, I remember, and 2, 3 weeks about, concern is not really, it's part of a structural moment of care, but it's just the surface, right? The concerns and daily concerns. It's kind of an average everydayness, our concern. Pay the bills, even though that's important, but a concern we have, did you get home safely? All real, but at the same time, for Heidegger, not really care, right? The care has this very fundamental sense of solicitude. We're actually solicited into care. We're called into care. And I like this, the calling of care or for care in being. And this anticipates, again, our ability to hear, which has been completely distorted and hurt by, late capital and, the onslaught of everyday media, the chatter. He calls, get ready as idle talk, or Jean Nancy calls it chatter, right? In some ways, idle talk, right? So anyway, I find this all very interesting. So again, I want to mention, sections 39 if you want to reread or look at it, because I always think rereading philosophy in particular, sections 39 through 43 are very, very interesting in terms of the beginning of the thinking about care of our times, right? In many ways. Yeah. And and to look at that really carefully again, to be careful in terms of against the culture of neglect. So we have all kinds of oppositions we can do: carefulness, right? Carefully, going forward in response to cultures of neglect, where I think we are. I mean, nobody really understands why it's so cold. Well, think about why the ocean's, warm, right? Think about the glaciers.
Yeah.
What's melting, right? So the warming is producing global climate change, which is cold as hell in the eastern. Yeah. So anyway, we have neglected really trying to understand these things and really engage it. And I like what I think George was going to come tonight. He said he was, but we'll see if he shows up. But again, we've had discussions with this with some of the anarcho-ecologists, right? My friend John Clark, et cetera. And there seems to be something called, what are the three major moments at this point? Well, there's still the threat of nuclear war, given the mad people that are in charge, which is still number one. I mean, that's the asset destruction of all of us, right? And Heidegger, of course, is writing in that moment in what is called Thinking, which we've read, and many other people, of course. He's not the only one, but he's certainly well aware of it. And he's very well aware of this in what he calls reserve stock in the question concerning technology. Secondly, of course, the climate change. There's just nothing but denial and disavowal. Even if you believe in science, I believe in the science, isn't it horrible? But, right,
yeah.
right. This goes on all the time. And then the third thing, of course, is this now presence, of which I think Stiegler is one of the thinkers who can undo some of this for us. And Yu Kui is his student. And I recommend Yu Kui two books. HUI, Contingency and Recursivity, and his book, The Question Concerning Technology in China. And I think he knows Daniel Ross well. And Yu Kui lives in Amsterdam, excuse me, the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. He's at the University of Rotterdam. So I think, again, this is the AI, so-called AI presence now is doing this. I watched the Super Bowl yesterday with Peter Bratich. Phil knows some of these people personally, so Leslie knows Peter. So, he's sometimes come to these sessions. And Kristen Lawler, who came, a few years ago too. I went to their place for the Super Bowl with Jeremy Glick, who has class tonight, or he'd be here. We noticed that many of the ads were generated by AI, and that a majority of the ads were AI, themselves and about AI, and paid for by AI speculation, et cetera, et cetera. So this seems to be the third thing, this kind of systemic stupidity that this kind of hyponesmic memory system has created.
Michael, how can you tell that they're AI generated? What are
Well,
the signals that you look for?
a lot of the signals are you begin to see almost a cartoonish, figures on the thing. You begin to see the codes that are playing out. It's no longer a human construction. It's kind of fed into the thing. I'll see if I can find one for you to show you. If not, next time I'll have it for you. I'll try my best now. Yeah, to see it. And then the mixture of both AI and human beings. So there's one with George Clooney where he appears, right? With famous actors. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yanis Varoufakis, he's been put up online with AI so much that, like, he appears more often as AI than he does in person. So he was he was saying he was trying to get YouTube to stop it, but of course they don't, because they're making so much money on the ads. So it's I see a lot of that stuff actually. I mean, I see him, I see Mearsheimer, I haven't seen you yet.
No, no, I don't want to be there. Yeah, yeah. I hope I'm already on the list, though. I'm one of six in New York City who's a dangerous public intellectual.
Yeah, yeah, I'm waiting for it though.
I was ashamed to be with some of these people, but anyway, it was okay. I mean, I was up, yeah, me and David Harvey. I forgot who else was on the list. That, yeah, all old guys, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, right, yeah. But I keep telling my students, whoops, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, light went out for a second. I guess in the back of me. I don't know. So anyway, going back to this, yeah, I mean, it is. I tell my students the great quote from The Wire: "The most dangerous person in America is a Negro with a library card." And the
Yeah.
purpose of teaching is to give you a library card so you can be creatively dangerous. You know where to go on the shelf to get ideas. You know how to connect ideas. So anyway, yeah, yeah. No, I haven't been on it yet, Phil. I feel very much thing. I don't know what happened here. If I lost a fuse or something, I don't know. Yeah.
I think they heard you saying you
you're
were on the
still good.
list. They're just
Yeah.
letting you
When
know
I say,
that they're
oh, I am
watching
on, they
you.
know that I'm on a list.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
They
yeah,
know that you know.
yeah, 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 yeah. They know that I know now. Okay, good. All right. Well, anyway, I have no light on the desk. I don't know what the hell happened here? Why this
Yeah.
happened? But yeah. Anyway,
We can still see you.
no, I
Yeah.
know you can see me, and I have the light on in the back too on the bookshelves, but I don't have a light on the desk which faces the window that looks at the beautiful skyline of downtown Brooklyn. Not one of these buildings was there when I moved in this apartment.
Wow.
Now
Yeah.
they're 20 high rise. It's unbelievable. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. So anyway, so going back to this, so the three main, and I really find the third one something we could do something about. I mean, obviously, you don't want nuclear war, but and this climate change. I mean, are we going to sabotage all the drill, baby drill, all the stuff that's going on? I mean, it's really insanity. No lessons being learned in 50, 60 years. I mean, how much time do we have to go through this, right? I mean, and years of education, etc. So it's very disturbing in a way. In one way, what I do like about Heidegger, he's really open to openness, right? You have to open yourself to that space, the openness to learn. And we seem to have lost that capacity. It's much more that education is now receptacle kind of learning. What do I need to know, professor? What do I need to do for the test? What do I need to get a job? Etc.
job ready.
Yes. What's important here? Instead of them really actually reading and determining for themselves, it's all these kind of levels. So this is another thing. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, anyway, I'm just kind of worried about if this is a major, yeah, I guess it's just because of a short maybe in the
Yeah, well, your kitchen light came on and it wasn't on before.
oh, it's back on. So this is probably in the fuse box. I'll go play with it afterwards. Yeah. And excuse me if I pull the book around if I want to quote from a page. I'll go to the light over here. I mean, actually, what I might do, and it's going to be too bright, but I can put the overhead of this stuff here. Let's see. I think it's working. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The overhead helps. Yeah. Okay. So too much light, but it's okay. Yeah, it's blurred and I'll put the thing down here so you don't see it so much. So anyway, yeah, so we're in the middle of a real struggle in this question of building communities of care. And I think this is a part of an internationalism that should really be taken seriously. How do we get here, going forward? because the stakes are enormous. I mean, just enormously high, in a way. And we've forgotten in some ways. I mean, maybe the question of being is we've not only forgotten the question of being, but we forgot the question of care and caring in some ways. And I don't mean in the liberal sense like Kite, although I admired that work and I thought it was highly intelligent. I mean in the sense of really the depth of care, which, begins with a care for the planet, that incorporates the indigenous movements. I've learned a lot, over the last 10, 15 years. I learned a lot in the 70s, but really more the last 10 or 15 years about the depth of indigenous culture and its relationship to the earth, in a sense, and et cetera. Why Musk is ready to go build casinos on Mars, villages on Mars. So Whitey's not only on the moon, he's on Mars now too, to play on the Gil Scott Aaron. It's insanity, but we're
Insanity. Yeah.
total insanity. Yeah. So, many ways. So, again, I thought it was a good beginning when we did the care of Heidegger. And again, I recommend, despite all the, problems around Heidegger as a human being at one level, and also, as at times pretty arrogant professor. If you read some of his things, you really do feel the arrogance of the pedagogy and what he's trying to convey as a rector. But at the same time, there's a real depth of learning here that's going on, which I don't think any serious person can just throw out out of the and out. So again, I have no relationship to the Heidegger estate. I don't really care so much for German, Germans that much. I like the French reading of Germans much more. And, I remember when I first read Heidegger, my mother said, "What do the Germans know about the Greeks?" You know, she got very upset,
Great
because
question.
of the occupation, 40s, right? And anyway, yeah. And the Greeks, in terms of the Germans, were very interesting. I mean, they blow up Nazi compounds. The Greek communists had a real effort in World War II. So anyway, all to say, but again, I think he's very important. And this is still a classic work in philosophy that's read actively by an international community. And the lectures, you learn a lot about the history of philosophy. He's really one of the strongest interpreters, in my opinion, in the history of philosophy. If you really want a different take on Plato's Republic or the allegory of the cave, Heidegger's got a pretty magnificent take on this, right? In a way. If you want a different take on Parmenides and, as a pre-Socratics, it's pretty amazing, yeah, when you begin to do this. And even the basic little texts like Introduction to Metaphysics. So anyway, I recommend again and again, I'm not here to promote him. I'm just saying that in terms of thinking and in terms of very strong interpretations in a tradition that he knows extremely well, that he is certainly worth reading and worth thinking through and engaging. So, etc. Right. I welcome your friend back there, Phil. You have a meeting of the all the militants on the West Coast here tonight at your place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Are you? So it's okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so yeah. So going forward, then we went into the Stiegler, the age of disruption, which I think is another crucial term for our moment here, the age of disruption, right? And what does it mean to disrupt at this point? What has been disrupted, and what does it mean to be disruptive? I mean, I'm always called disruptive in meetings, etc. You know, and I take that as a badge of honor, to be honest with you.
Indeed.
So we read a lot. We read the beginning on radicalization, and this first moment of disruption is that there's an absence of epoch. We are not in an epoch yet, and this is a very important concept in terms of longer temporal thinking, right? The longer horizon of an ontological notion of time. That this epoch does not have a name yet. There's not an epoch that is futural at this point. And I think this is very important that Stiegler is basically speaking to the problem of generations. They don't really have an epoch right now. You know, this new generation. At least we came up in the self-consciousness, right? We came up in an era of critical thinking, right? Which were all part of a kind of avant-garde, if you will, of thinking during the, the 60s and the 70s, which really, in my opinion, still recapitulated the 20s, 30s, and 40s in a way. But, now this generation has nothing but description, right? And maybe minimal criticism when you really look at the reading out there. Very good at investigative journalism, very good at, putting out journalistic articles, but really in terms of serious thinking, very, very hard to find, in some ways. Whereas mathematicians and science goes on, but in the United States, we're going to see a deterioration of that more in science because of the lack of funding. Trump is already destroying the scientific industrial complex, which actually hurts the military ultimately. He's a complete fool of the people around him or whoever's propping up this orange man puppet, it's really idiocy at the first degree. Yeah.
And maybe it won't come from the US.
Well, that's a
Maybe
good point. Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it'll come
Well,
from
China is
somewhere
way
else.
ahead. Mm,
I'm not sure if only coming from China either.
mm,
Well, we'll see. I mean, they've seemed to be able to do deep seek in a very concrete way, better than the U.S. has done it. Their EVAs are pretty good, but that again, that would still be in a productivist paradigm, right?
very
That doesn't
productive.
really go
Yeah.
back to the existential or to the what does it mean to be human, which is a real question today
So,
too. Yeah.
so what would a futurist epoch look like?
Well, that's
What
a hard thing to say. We don't know. But
but even
what
here
I'm
in
talking
this,
about is the lack of, the absence
I
of,
I
and
know, but here in this
avant-garde.
room, could
Yeah.
we come up? Could we even attempt it? What do we want?
Oh, well, I mean, I mean, I think one thing is the recapturing of, if you will, the anonymous memory, right? To be able to use the best of what we have in the past and be able to put that out there and rethink. There are many traditions. For example, I got I mean, I can maybe show it to you. I think I saved it. I made a PDF. Hold on one second. Um, for example, for me, I mean, one thing that I think is a very good practice going forward, and I'm not trying to be scholastic here, but is the rereading of seminal texts, right? And being able to use them in today's context to clear the thinking. I don't think you just have a practical reason for creating an epoch. I think that happens, right? In a sense,
Okay.
it's part of a moment. Look, give me just one second. I'll see if I can find this text I have. Yeah, I'm not getting it yet. Hold on one minute. Yeah, just give me one second. I do have it. I want to show you. I'll share this with you. This is a remarkable work. Let me just see if I can get this up on one of the files. Yeah, it's called coiled verbal string. And I'm going to share the screen just to show you this text because this was a discovery. This has been out a little while, so I don't know how I missed it. I'm very upset with myself having missed this, but anyway, we'll see. Let me just see if I can get it up. Yeah, here it is. Okay, everybody can see this, the coiled verbal string. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Devices of Lenin's Language. Yeah, okay. And it's from Rob Press from Helsinki, Finland, right? It's in English content. So Out of Sync with the Thing by Zegan Voynich, right? And then there are many texts here by a who's who of Russian
Oh, wow.
formalism and futurism. So you have Viktor Shklovsky, Lenin as a deaconizer, right? Vladimir Mayakovsky, don't merchandise Lenin. You begin to see all these forms
Yeah.
at work. So Leslie, back to your question. Part of the idea is to recapture a radical imagination, right? To recapture and cast it into the future. This is the radical imagination through formalist and futurist writing at a period of time. So Lenin's basic stylistic tendencies, Yeah, the deflation of the high style in Lenin's work. This is Lev Yablinsky, right? These are great names. I mean, these are people I really love. I remember playing chess in the 70s, and I had a professor named Avron Fleischman who was a special in this. And Fleischman turned me on to the Russian firm. I could not get enough of Boris Eichenbaum, The Overcoat, the reading of Gogol's Overcoat, Victor Shklovsky, who's one of my heroes. I mean, anyway, I have many books of Shklovsky's, including The Theory of Prose, which is a magnificent study of what the prose form is. Yeah, and then, so devices of Lenin's speech, right? In the and then I don't know, Beryl, you probably know this name, Darko Suvin. Do you know Darko Suvin?
No,
He wrote,
no, I
yeah,
don't.
he's great. You should look at, he's
Yeah.
great. He did a great
Well, I'll look him up. Yeah.
rethinking of Brecht, rewriting the Communist Manifesto with a
Wow.
great commentary. Darko Suvin is worth reading and thinking about, not known to many people, unfortunately, but
No,
I
not
really
really.
like him. So yeah, so constructing the theses here, Leslie. So, going to your question, this offers a lot towards your question because this was a moment of the devices of, probably with Mao Zedong, Fidel Castro, and others, one of the great leaders, and I'm not into the cult of the leader, but these forces that all came together in these people that were able to produce a revolution that changed the direction of the world. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did a good job today in my superhero class. I did the East-West distinction, and I went back to the Bolsheviks, and I said they were interested in the new man, not the Superman.
Yeah.
So we went back. We played on the Uber. I
Some
said,
of
this
us
is
made it
very,
out.
very
That's
interesting.
kind of
Yeah.
where my head is at because I'm like feeling it where it's like in your mouth, but then like here is like sharp. And then I'm like,
Okay.
sometimes, like,
So anyway, I'll go on. I don't want to interrupt. I
something,
thought
something.
I did interrupt
Out of sync with the
Phil's
thing.
right.
Wow.
So out of sync with the thing. Okay. The introduction here. So yeah. So that's the first long introduction here. And just to give you an idea, what are we going to do? And this, again, Leslie, this is a very deep history, going back to the Russian, moment, right? The formalists, what the Bolsheviks were really about. What do we do now that the left wants to join our family, right? The left. It was a question, the Lunachevsky,
No,
right? Lunachevsky, I'm sorry, the Committee for Culture and Education asked the Left and Marxism Symposium in Moscow in the 3rd of July. And these were very important things. Who do we write for? For whom do we write? Who do we experiment for? Et cetera, et cetera. So again, this issue of the practice and practical, reasoning is very important for me. So you can see down here, left was not a futurist minor bohemian or group hustle, including the versions of the Hylenians, the ego futurist, centrifuge, 41 degree. You can see all these groups are going on during this period. It's a fascinating, today we have all these factions and groups, but it's going on in 1920, right? 100 years ago. And this attempt to change things radically. So very interesting. Futurism, was already before the October Revolution, that we alone are the face of our time, right? Yeah. So you can see here, et cetera. Through us, the horn of time blows in the art of the world, right? In a sense. So again, I mean, maybe part of the issue is to slip back into the aesthetic dimension with full force, right? In order to be able to show the subversive part that forms and practice play together.
Many times,
Mm.
especially if
Yeah.
I have to get up
So
early.
then Mayakovsky, you probably know his poetry,
Yeah.
right?
And then
Wonderful.
I have Hegel on the left wing of my bookshelf over, can't see it. And then I have Mayakovsky on the right side. But it depends on if you're looking out, it's Mayakovsky on the left.
On the left. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, I've read all his poems. I love Mayakovsky. I do a little spiel on the three authors of the bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, right? There are actually four. So, but anyway, I use three. I use Hart Crane, Walt Whitman, and Mayakovsky. Yeah, the three
Who's
great
the fourth,
attempts at
Michael?
the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm sorry?
Who was the fourth?
The fourth ended up being Arthur Miller, The View from the
Oh,
Bridge.
right. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Mm.
anyway, Leslie, I don't know if this resonant. I mean, in a way, but this to me is the kind of projects we really need, right? In a sense,
Mm.
right? And there were too much about protest and resistance, right? In a way. I'm not against this. I mean, I know it's very important. And I know Phil's out there on the front lines many times. Why he missed a couple of classes. We can excuse him. But anyway, on the other hand, this is the kind of work that resonates with certain people and has a shelf life. To be honest with you, the Russian formalists got co-opted by the advertising industry. Yeah,
Yes.
this is really a problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you missed the
So how
actually.
do you get back and undo that
Mm.
in a sense?
Yeah.
Here we go. So you can see all the people here. Akinbaum,
Oh,
Tanayo,
this looks like a great book.
It's a
Yeah.
great book. I really recommend it. Do you
Mm.
want me to send you the PDF? I mean, I can send.
Oh, yeah. I'd love
I'll
that.
send
Thank
the
you.
PDF out. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
So you can
Uh,
see here, it's very interesting, parallel to the theoretical impasse that occurred. And this is the thing, because we're doing theory in many ways. We're trying
Yeah.
to do
Well,
theory. Yep.
I did
The
videos.
methodological impatience
I can
of
send you
art
the,
historians anxious to avoid the vertigo of contradictions within revolutionary
Mm.
politics. A good
Yeah.
example is Marjorie
I'm gonna get
Perlow.
it up online.
She's a contemporary thinker. Beryl
Mm.
probably knows who she is,
Mm.
wrote
Mm.
on formalism, etc.
Yeah.
Right? The futurist manages to squeeze the
Yeah,
politics
and I'm
on
sorry
Russian
that I
futurism.
sent
She's in some ways academics squeeze the message. This is a
Mm. Mm.
that academics, scholasticism ultimately
No, it's
squeezes
okay.
it out, in a sense. So into 2.5 pages, right? Yeah. A tour de force of political theory that evolves from Trotsky to Robert Tucker by way of Walter Benjamin, the Telltale Journal, which was Derrida, Roland Barthes, Julia Kristeva, Philippe Solers, among
It's
others,
interesting. But,
Marcelin
not,
Plenet,
It's not.
Matei Kalinescu,
Yeah.
Charles Russell, Bertolt Brecht, Lukács, Lenin, and the Hitler-Stalin Pact. So this is a criticism, of course, of what happens in academia.
Mm.
This
Mm.
condensation in 2.5 pages, right?
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
so the result is a
Yeah,
correction of
there's
Benjamin's
even
thesis on the
more shit
difference,
that
and
came
this
out
is
of it.
very interesting. Hey, Phil, sorry,
Very much cares about
I
that.
guess he's involved in that. I'm just going to try to, I guess I can mute him myself. Yeah.
I think you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just did. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I don't like silencing people, but anyway, sometimes
Oh, when they're not talking to you, that's fine.
that's true. He's not talking. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the result is a correction of the thesis, and this is very important. Again, Leslie, fascism that is aestheticizing the political and communism politicizing the aesthetic.
Aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
Mm.
Arguing that they might as well be two sides of the same coin,
Mm.
right? Interesting.
That's really interesting too.
Mm.
That's what we're seeing today, aren't we?
Yes,
Oh,
definitely.
God, yes.
No
Yeah.
question about it. In
Mm.
order to avoid these kinds of anxious shortcuts, right? And I like this too. I will take a big detour. I like the big detour. I've been on a big detour for 50 years.
For the Russian Revolution, yeah.
Through the context of the Russian Revolution via the concepts of the avant-garde and formalist theory, right? And I don't know if you've ever read any of Eichenbaum or, certainly Shlovsky. These are the major thinkers, but there are a lot of others that wrote great position papers. But anyway, and then the avant-garde that emerged out of this too, of what Mayakovsky was one element. In painting, of course, Kandinsky. You have the other ones. I think there was the Sternberg brothers in terms of the graphic arts. Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. I have. Yeah. Anyway, which will enable some discrepancies to be addressed without having to be embarrassed about their bold and radical positions. What follows is not a systematic theory, and this is good, not a systematic theory, right, on the relation between art and politics, but some entry points on the topic that would lead us on our way, to the heart of the question of how to practice avant-garde in political contexts.
Mm.
Very interesting,
Yes.
huh? While
Yes.
reviewing literature on the Russian avant-garde, Paul Wood wrote that politics doubtless cannot explain art, but neither can art alone explain politics.
Politics.
Very
Yeah.
interesting here, right? So following this, I don't want to apologize for things, but anyway, it's very good. And he goes through the histories here, and then the surrender of all positions, the Bolshevik, many reasons to be suspicious, the Bolsheviks and the communists of the futurists and the formalists. I mean, very interesting. And on the other hand, in 1919, so Eichenbaum commented on Alexander Bloch's poem about the October Revolution, the 12th, right? I don't know if you know that poem. It's worth reading, I gotta say. Okay, so they say the poem is good. I do not know. I see Bloch as letting himself be crucified on the cross of the revolution, and I can only view this with pious terror. That's Eichenbaum speaking. On the other hand, Shklovsky in 1919, a year later, the formidable futurist theoretician and the main energy behind the formalists, reacted to the futurist decision to accept an arts leadership position under the aegis of the National Commissariat of Education, the narco compros, writing, and to think that we futurists have connected our creative work on the Third International Congress. This is the surrender of all positions. So you begin to see the conflicts that really go on in terms of, a new political movement, the creation of the new political or the new person, if you will, if you want to put it that way, right? In a sense, right? So Shklovsky's the chapter regarding art and revolution, his book on Knight's Move, and chess was always there for these guys. That's another thing I really love. I'm not an expert chess player, but I'm good enough to understand moves and see positions and, see a few moves ahead. But chess was obviously crucial to these people too. Yeah. And to Lenin, who played all the time. Yeah. In many ways. So literature and revolution, of course, in the decisive year, of course, was published too, the Trotsky piece, which is worth reading. I'm not a Trotskyist, but it's called Literature and Revolution, 1923, right? Very, again. So
Not only that,
anyway,
he wrote it on a train.
What's that? I'm sorry?
He
Yeah.
wrote it on a train, did he
On a
not?
train. That's correct. Yes, he did. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
A writer's block for Trotsky.
Yes, indeed. So he formatively analyzed the futurist progressive elements, their militant anger against stifling paths of bourgeois culture. What do we kill off and what remains? Is especially accurate in disclosing the tactical errors of their combative positions. As the first man of the Red Army and the chairman of the Supreme Military Council, he was able to illustrate the formal shortcomings of avant-garde militancy. Mayakovsky is always shooting at the edge, and as every artilleryman knows, such gunning gives a minimum of hits and speaks most heavily about the guns. So this is interesting. Yeah, I mean, you begin to see these clashes that are really going on that are incredibly interesting. So much more interesting and if you will, substantial than what happens today in these little arguments, right? You begin to see this pass. So the exercise here, I mean, and one of the reasons I bring this up, of course, and I'll send you the PDF, but one of the reasons I bring this up is that this is an example of anonemic activity that could be part, again, of communities of care who want to remember the past and be able to, as you said, Leslie, earlier today, the future of an epoch, right? To my mind. Yeah. So this, that kind of exercise. So it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is interesting that Nikolai Puin wrote, "Communism as a theory of culture cannot exist without futurism." This is all very interesting in how this works, the art of commune. And then he goes on the mismatch of form and movement. You begin to get into these technical questions, but very valuable questions. What is a form? Right,
Yeah.
in a way. How do we give? Where do forms come from? Going back to Plato, of course, again, and the anonymic. Yeah, please, Beryl. Yeah. Beryl. Yeah.
No.
Oh,
Just
okay.
talking to myself.
Oh, okay, okay, no problem. Okay. So very interesting here too. And again, you can see Trotsky is very present in the beginning. And again, I'm not a Trotskyist, but there's something to be learned here. Again, right?
Mm,
Because sometimes you have to lay down your own arms and your political, orthodoxies, if you will, or your political belief systems, and say, let me read here for a different way where I suspend my judgment and see what I can really take up, right? And then you can bring in the critical capacity. But to
mm,
really
Well,
read and to think,
we'll need the Trotskyists, because it carries on the conversation. It elevates
sure.
to the bigger issues.
So here's the pre-Socratic to me. How do you translate elemental force? Going back to
mm,
Karatani, going back to the pre-Socratics, bringing these things out again, right? In a sense, right? How do you go back? I mean, I really like Karatani. I'm working with a student right now on the origins of philosophy, isonomia, and the Ionian school of philosophy and how this works.
mm,
How do we take elemental force from that period to build a society of equality? Because according to
mm,
Karatani, equality existed, economic equality was there before freedom, and this was corrupted by Athenian democracy, which makes you rethink what does democracy mean? What does
Yeah.
radical democracy mean? Etc. How do we get into this mess? I mean, representative democracy is a total joke, as we see. We're
yeah,
going to be crying about the midterms. We're going to be so happy that the Democrats take back the House of Representatives. What a joke. What have we become? In a way. That's not going to be any change. It's just a cycle, right? In a sense.
mm,
So they go on to Lenin in a sense, but really what this book is going to do, and I like the way he frames it in the beginning, the political geometry. Here you go. The
mm,
political geometry of the revolution. Now, I know none
mm.
of you, and I'll show you next time in Montreal. My book is there. It's in my bedroom, of course. The King of Time, it's called. and, and it's a beautiful book on the tables of destiny in history. His name is Velimir Klebnikov, the poet.
Lemnikov. Mm,
Klebnikov. And he's King of Time. It's translated by Paul Schmidt. You can get it, it's available.
wow.
It's a beautiful poem called The Tables of Destiny.
Yeah.
Right. The revolution could be at the same time, very interesting, a new structure, not only equality and redistribution and taking over means of production, but a new structure. And this is very interesting
Mm,
to me. How do you get there? Yeah, in many ways.
mm,
And then the play of Shklovsky, etc. By the way, when Stalin, during the Stalinist period, and when literary critics were brought in and interrogated, they always say, "Are you a follower of Shklovsky?" And that was your doom if you were a follower
mm,
of Shklovsky during the Stalinist period. However, he spared Shklovsky. Yeah,
mm,
Stalin was not foolish. He knew what he could and couldn't do at a certain point. Yeah, yeah. So yeah. Anyway, the revolution is certainly beneficial for electrification, industrialization, where my cursor, cinematography. If it is not, if it is opposed to those things, it will be crushed. So this is very interesting, Shklovsky, right? But especially here, cinematography. No greater
mm.
moment than the experiments, in my opinion, of course, Alexandrov, Eisenstein, of course, who
Eisenstein.
wrote
Mm,
Theory of Film, and Ziga
mm,
Vertov.
mm,
Yeah, man with a movie camera.
yeah.
Fourth term of the dialectic in the camera. Very interesting how this works in Vertov. Yeah, yeah. So very, very, very good stuff. So yeah, this goes on. I mean, really. So again, Leslie, I'm sorry to divert, but I don't think it's a diversion. I think it's an example of how one can go back and one uses historical memory, you know, to make it in more concrete English than anamnesis, as Steele would have it, recollection, but to use
Mm,
historical memory productively, right? And really create new forms. This is the idea. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How do you avoid the repetition of the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon politically? How do you avoid the repetition in artworks of doing the same thing? So Bad Bunny looks like Caleb Calloway as a Puerto Rican yesterday. So you go the Cotton Club to the Super Bowl, right? In some ways. I mean, this is the way I read. I'm sorry.
Mm.
I see the
It's
form, I see the costume, etc. I'm reminded of something in a sense. So there's nothing really subversive. I mean, it's a statement, but statements aren't subversive, right? They don't really subvert dominant consciousness. Yeah. They may be a contrary, right? You begin to see contrast between, those people who can't stand Trump and different types of artists and put it out. But it's only contrasting. It's not really undoing, right? It's not really
No.
making you and forcing you to think in a sense. So that's another thing too. And here you go, right here. They could meet. Ultimately, the social context of the Bolshevik future was urban culture. They could meet in the arena. This is great.
Mm.
I love this. To me, this is what it's about, right? Boris Arvatov wrote that the leftists, you see Lefist, are for the contemporary urban, industrial, Americanized art to the minutest detail. Trotsky, on the other hand, replied to the post-Plakak's observation that the Bolsheviks were the pick of the flabby and uncouth Russian people. So you used to have debates about this, right? In terms of literature, etc. Bolshevism is the product of a city culture. Without Petrograd, there would have been no selection from the uncouth people. And this goes back, you can start reading about the Petrograd Soviet,
Yeah.
right, during this period, and you begin to see the Russian Revolution at work, right? Yeah, in many ways. Yeah, yeah. What really happened in the Petrograd Soviet, etc. So, and you see this in Eisenstein in the October 1917 film he made in 1927. All worth viewing at least once every year. Yeah. A great testament to the to the October Revolution, right? Okay, so this is very interesting too. So the left years, right? The left, LEF for years, especially at the time of publishing, the issue of Lenin's language were years of discontent within the NEP, the new economic policy. The flame of the revolution, which animated the elemental forces of the futurist poetic imagination, had by 24 changed its form. So what you're getting here in a certain way is the history of the literary and artistic imagination in something that was really trying to be new. The destruction of bourgeois culture, the non-repetition of bourgeois culture, although retaining the best, if you will, of Tolstoy, retaining the best of Dostoevsky, of Pushkin, etc., in the 19th century, and the American art of that time too, yeah, etc. So very, very interesting thing. So the NEP is usually seen as, and this is very important to me, the NEP is usually seen as an economist concession to capitalism, the new economic policy, right? In a country which was transforming from pre-bourgeois conditions to socialism. It was further seen as a step back into pre-revolution economic relations, which reduced communist collectivization to parallel structures that existed side by side with capitalist formations. It was seen as a temporary withdrawal from the over rash and over enthusiastic, right? Right? Very interesting, right? Dash forward into communism. And you go to E.H. Carr, who's not a great, to my opinion, he wrote a book on the revolution, but it's not the best. But anyway, he formulated two practical objections: to take into account a backward peasant economy, and secondly, to build up the industry and not further depress the position of the industrial workers who form the main bulwark of the revolution. So anyway, it goes on about the NEP here in the new economic policy. This is great. I mean, in a sense, but it gives you much. Charles Bettelheim, you probably know, was a great French theorist of the revolution. Wrote a very good book on the Chinese Cultural Revolution as well. Charles Bettelheim, very good French historian too. And then Althusser, text uncontestable, the formalist text between 1917 and 1923. These texts are incontestable in advancing Lenin's deepest and most fertile theoretical discoveries, right, in a sense. So Althusser says this. And remember, Althusser was the one first one to bring Lenin into a philosophy department.
Mm.
Lenin in philosophy showed
Mm.
great courage of Louis Althusser. I always will admire him for that. Yeah, that he had the guts to go
Mm.
to the French elite, right? In a sense, being invited by Jean Hippolyte, and he gives a talk on Lenin and philosophy. Just
Mm.
like Paul Nizan in the great book, The Watchdogs, Philosophers in the Established Order, right? Very, very interesting moments against how the bourgeois culture was recapitulated, the reactionary tendencies, the left liberal tendencies, and all of this too,
Mm.
that takes the language and dilutes it. Because what he's, I think, trying to do here in putting together this compilation is to say, look, some of this language becomes co-opted. But at the time, no,
Mm.
it was not to be co-opted, right? It was revolutionary. So you're right, yeah, yeah. So Deadly Battle, that Sergei Tretiakov talked about. One was far and arrogant, the former owners and rentier class, the amorphous block of the inner city petty bourgeois and village stagnant mass. They didn't pull punches. I mean, it's good. It was
Mm.
an NEP of inertia, of the heroes of the bourgeoisie and feudal traditions offended by the revolution. The second NEP was sustained by those who were caught on fire from the October flame, right? Determined to continue the revolution and the class war, right? Very good. Now crystallized in every apartment that cut into the living meat of the family, right? This NEP got its energy from the will to commune. I like this.
Mm.
Will to commune, right? Its antagonism went far beyond the frame of economic policy, expanding to a clash between fundamental principles. One stood for individualism, idealism, and nationalism. The other struggled for collectivism, materialism, and internationalism. So you begin to see these codes, how they
Mm.
play out during this period. This group, the left group, was against this first NEP, used in their journal to call for artists to stop decorating the already comfortable life of the bourgeoisie. Yeah,
See.
yeah, home decoration, right? Anyway, it was widely understood that this was aimed at the NEP bourgeoisie, the new economic policies. So into the production, how it goes, So I'll send you this. I don't want to make, everyday production, how the contradictions multiply. And the main thing to be, if you're going to be, involved in this in a deep way, is never to be afraid of the contradictions, to face them. Yeah, because there's always going to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is it. Yeah, this is going to go on constantly. So we'll see about this here too. So interesting here, literature and revolution, the lesson of October, again, Trotskyist moments. Then poetry as practical organization. Interesting, right? This section, chapter 8 here in the beginning. The critique of everyday life and the insistence about, as opposed to consumerism, were the core ideas of the LEF, right? And this goes into the principal idea issue with Lenin's language could be viewed through the lens of the social and context of futurism and formalism, such as understanding the productivist aspect of political speech as a social register that runs counter to the oppressive language of the everyday. And he goes on to some of the articles here. So this is a great book. I mean, I want to just say,
Yeah.
just to give you another example, a great compilation, really something. The limits of poetic praxis and the Leninist answer to Marxist theory. So this is another thing too
Mm.
that's kind of, excuse me, happening today. You're beginning to see this, right? So
Mm.
Roman Jakobson, and you should know this name. He's a master, right? The great linguist, very good friends with Claude Lévi-Strauss. I'll tell you, parenthetically, an anecdote. Jakobson would go to Paris, right? And he would visit Lévi-Strauss. Lévi-Strauss got very tired because Jakobson liked to stay up late. Lévi-Strauss was a man of habit, right? The great anthropologist. So Lévi-Strauss suggested, look, go stay with Jacques Lacan. He likes to stay up late. So Jakobson and Lacan began a long discussion about poetry because Lévi-Strauss kicked him out. Basically, gentlemanly, kicked him out. But anyway, very interesting. So Roman Jakobson is very important. He wrote a book on Klebnikov barrel. Very good thing. He argued that poetry had a special aesthetic function that is opposite to the everyday practical language, which is extremely conservative. Right? Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the heaviness of conservative language, Jacobson opposed the language of two poets, Klebnikov and Mayakovsky. And they're good to read together, in my opinion, different in scope, but very interesting together, who open the space. And again, when you talk about future epochs, you have to open the space for the future epoch, the futurity in language in their efforts to revolutionize poetry. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So immediately after the suicide, and this has been thrown into question if he actually committed suicide, of Mayakovsky, Jakobson wrote a text, The Generation That Squandered Its Poets. It's certainly worth reading. I've read this, again, I love Roman Jakobson. I love his book on autism, by the way, again. So, yeah. The life project of Jakobson was to use poetry to study and oppose the dominant immobility of linguistic sciences. He persistently researched the futurist currency of the poem in language shifters. Language shifters, verbal shifters, very important, used in psychoanalysis, by the way, and she was a student of his, Julia Kristeva, right? The markedness of its sounds and other topics can easily be related to the preliminary interest in the transgressive, here we go, transgressive potential of poetic language. Yeah, yeah, yeah. His output is well researched, and in the essay, he makes a curious remark about the specific political and historical conjuncture of the poetic experiments of Russian futurism. He did not translate BYT, I guess we need Arto, because Western European languages have no word that corresponds, as there is no concept for such a force as might oppose and break down the established norms of life. But the Russians have this. Very interesting, this term, BYT. I remember reading this in his works on linguistics. Yeah, yeah. In Russia, where Marxist theories is answered by Leninist practice, there was something equally strong that could confront the stifling gravity, right, of the everyday. It was this strange animal, the strong element of the Bolsheviks' communism, which everyone, including futurist eccentrics and formalist scholastics, tried to make sense of. Very interesting, right? How this works, right? In a sense. Yeah. So very good. Peter Steiner's book it's a good book. I've looked at it. I haven't read it, in its entirety, but it looks very good, Peter Steiner's work. And of course, the futurist principle introduces another facet that was denied by Saussure. So you begin to see here, and again, I'm sorry for riffing so much, but this is very exciting to me to see something like this come back around at this point that has been completely out of the academy for a very long time. Yeah. So anyway, the Russian principle, a facet denied by Saussure. Everybody knows Saussure. This is the course on general linguistics that was so crucial, again, to French structuralism, right? Yeah, very crucial, right? Here. Into language system, time, right? Time. Language on the point of the intersection of the axis, that is, meeting point of diachronic and synchronic systems, as Saussure do. He instead thickened those lines by arguing that language was impregnated with history, right? I mean, you want one paragraph, Leslie, to really meditate on? Here we go, right here. The intersection of the axis, meeting point of diachronic and synchronic systems, right? As Saussure would do, yeah. And, he did a whole course in linguistics that was put together by students' notes. I think it was 1916, if I'm not mistaken. He instead thickened these lines by arguing that language, right, was impregnated with history where time-marked variants, archaism, modernisms of speech always co-occur. right? I like this.
Mm,
This meant that incompatible temporalities coexisted within language. This is
mm,
remarkable when you begin
mm,
to think about
mm,
this. Yeah, yeah. Incomparable temporalities coexisted within language, right? Through the addition of profoundly dialectic dynamics within speech, right? To put it simply,
mm,
which is good, the reactionary conservative elements of language were simultaneously in operation with revolutionary, that is, transgressive and novel. That's what revolutionary means in a way, novel and transgressive.
mm,
Dynamics. As Peter Steiner wrote, at any moment, the system is both balanced and unbalanced, and it is a poetic praxis was able to exploit these dialectics at their best. The result was a more advanced model than Shklovsky, which they think is mechanical. I don't, but it's okay. You can
mm,
use this. And then Tinanov's organic model, the latter of which operated similarly to poetry's imminent need for the constant rejuvenation of language. Yeah.
mm,
External changes, social, political. So if you want to mark pages, I'm going to send you this 41,
mm,
42. It's kind of crucial in terms of the coiled spring that he's speaking
mm,
about, right? External changes, social, political, could penetrate into language only if they satisfy some of the internal demands. It's internal, that is only if they correspond to the developmental tendencies of the system itself. Yeah. The meta poetics of the formalist project, which Steiner correctly described as anti-philosophical, which is interesting, claimed
mm.
to understand the world as an antagonism between poetic and practical languages. Very nice. Yeah, to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm,
The
mm,
entire simultaneous combinations of unseen contradictions are the result of this system. So again, I emphasize
mm.
41, 42, these
Yeah.
paragraphs on language, right? Right? So poetic practice, he'll go on about that. And then, the unruly bunch, the formalists in the 20s, the wild bunch, if you want to put it in filmic terms, instead of the Wild
Mm,
West, the Wild
mm,
Russian moment in the
mm,
20s, right? And this goes on of how they conflicted with each other in the different groups that emerged. But again, to me, I'll say this, I've said it before, for me, at least experientially and personally, and also through some thought, to me, the period of 1917 to probably about 1926, 1927 was as prescient and
mm,
as demanding and innovative as the Greek
mm,
period of the Golden Age in some
mm,
ways, in terms of experimentation, how much really came out, what it opened up in terms of the space for learning, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And this is an attempt to go back to that period, maybe to set it aright at this point, because look, again, we had many reductionistic attempts
mm,
towards the aesthetics and the art that really distorted, if you will, the revolutionary impulses. Yeah.
mm,
So this is one of the things. So yeah, and the Opa Yaz group, you should look this up. This was another moment, introduced some of the most radical ideas in the formalist canon, Osip Brick, these people, etc. Yeah, Opa Yaz was the gravedigger of poetic idealism. The gravedigger. They love this about Marx, when he said the gravedigger of capitalism, the
yeah.
proletariat. They love this metaphor,
Yeah.
very much so. So anyway, there's many things here. Some people, I mean, I have to do more research on. And then the secret correspondence, similar to Brecht's approach, the formalist and the futurist, aimed to clear the way for poetry and art that was not intimidated by vulgar and naturalist schemas of reductionism, right? The anatomy of poetry. So he goes on, the poet is an
Mm,
expert in his own business, implies that the technical knowledge of the artist makes sense only when they are understood from this perspective. And he goes into this notion of ostronomy, which is defamiliarization, which is very much like the alienation effect
mm,
in Brecht.
right.
very
Mm.
close in terms of that too. So this is a very, again, crucial. So I think from this introduction, not to, be overly tedious and scholastic about this, but this is something very important to look at, right? The
Mm.
philosophy of verse language, right? Yeah, again, yeah. So who will play the first violin? Chapter 12 going on, which is great. And yeah, I think there are about 14. I forgot exactly how many sections there are in the long introduction, the formalist reply, and I'm just going through it. So this is all part of the introduction. Then the conjuncture. You'd be interested in the poetic conjuncture. Again, Shlovsky's experimental autobiography. It was called The Third Factory. This guy was brilliant, man.
Wow.
I'm telling you, he lived in a small apartment just filled with books. He ended his life there. People would go to see him, the great Victor Shlovsky. Yeah, a master really in all of this. The reading was there. And again, going back, Mayakovsky set out to write a commemorative poem, a process which took almost a year, a commemorative poem to Lenin. 1 year. Think about
Mm.
this, Yeah.
Mm.
The question was not how to find the right words for Lenin to renew his craft, but also how to remain a poet while writing the poem on Lenin.
Mm.
This is amazing
Mm.
in some way.
Mm.
How does one write this, right? In a sense, right?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The years. Finished the poem Lenin, read it in many workers' gatherings. I've been very much afraid of that poem since it would have been easy to descend to the level of a simple political tale. Very nice, huh? Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Mayakovsky. They were serious people, very serious.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so that's it. Out of sync with the thing, the formalists on Lenin's language, the devices, the rhetoric, etc. But the literary device. So this is really an attempt for me, which I'm very interested in always, the materialist thinking of language. What is a materialist view on language, right? In a sense, right? And how to go about this. And then finally, the Soviet conjuncture, what happens afterwards, right? And etc., how this takes place. And then it gets into the text, I think. Oh, yeah, not by mustard alone, Zom. Yeah, that's the time span, not by mustard alone. Another funny thing. I think you get a kick. I mean, to read the
Oh, yeah.
introduction, it's not really that difficult. I mean,
Mm.
it's very, very well written, etc. Yeah. So I'm going to send it to you. And then the short history of the Marxist philosophy of language. I've been looking all over the place. I think I know where it is now for Marxism and the philosophy of language. Another book worth studying. Just not enough time, and there's not enough
No, there's not enough time. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But
Like
Marxist
how you deal
philosophy
with
of
all
language.
of this history and philosophy
Yes,
and the contemporary
I know,
problems.
I know, I know. You ought to
It's
see
just,
what time I wake up every night and
yeah.
how much I start doing and then try to get
Yeah.
to sleep. But anyway, it's
Yeah.
okay. Marxist philosophy of language by Voloshinov, where he distinguishes between the signal and the sign. How we
Ah.
the signaling,
Mm.
ideological signaling versus the sign. Very interesting in terms of the materialism.
Mm.
Voloshinov was Mikhail Bakhtin. And again, I'm looking at the bottom shelf. I think it's where it is. Marxism, Philosophy of Language. It's a great text. Yeah, and in some ways was the intersection, in my opinion, on language between Derrida and Bakhtin and Voloshinov and the Marxist theory of language. So kind of interesting too. And remember, all these people were centered in Paris, right? Because, in a certain way. Kojève in 33, Jakobson came, of course, the French themselves, were there. Saussure was read. He was, he wrote in French on general linguistics. You have many, many conflicting schools of linguistics then too on the material word. So this is very interesting. Again, they go back to the Telquel group, and I just mentioned this, led by Kristeva. It was not led by Kristeva. She was the token woman, unfortunately, in the group. She was very smart and had an incredibly active voice, but yeah, she was not the leader. There were many, many of them. Philippe Solès, who wrote a piece called Numbers. Jacques Derrida's, by the way, Plato's Pharmacy, that Stiegler mentions, Pharmacon, came out of the Telltale group, as well as many other texts, right? Yeah. Including Essay on Objection by Julia Kristeva, right? Yeah. So, very interesting how this was recaptured in the late 60s and the early 70s, yeah, in a way. Yeah, yeah. So very interesting too. A small paragraph, right? Very interesting on the metamorphosis of commodities from Marx Capital was called The Fire and Change of the Forms, according to a Heraclitean understanding of fire as a source for transformation. This is again, page 90, if I'm reading correct, 99. Yeah, 99, right? Very interesting. The second issue of Change was dedicated to the question of destruction. It was a wild mixture of Leninist polemics, Nietzsche, Marx, alchemy, Russian formalism. Yeah, they're crazier than me. Futurist, conceptual poetry, and experimental writing, Eisenstein and Noam Chomsky. Right? Very interesting, right? A particular emphasis was given to Marx's elaboration of the change in form or the metamorphosis of commodities through which the social metabolism is mediated. Hopefully, we can engage this. I know you won't be in Greece this summer, but we'll do our best to record. I wish too, Beryl would be great. Yeah, be
So
great.
wish.
Yeah. Leslie had a great time. She can tell you,
Yeah, she has.
New event. Right.
It was great, but I don't think I'll be able to make it either.
Yeah.
No.
It's a long trip for both of you. I know that. Yeah. But anyway, so the fire of change. So all this is very important, page 99. Very, very important to engage on destruction. Very interesting. A quote from Yuri Tinaoff. I would not understand literature if there had not been the revolution. I really like this. I really love this quote, right? In many ways. Yeah. I would not have understood literature, right? If there had not been the revolution. Right. Very, very good. Yeah. Very, very good.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. By the way, one of Julia Kristeva's best books was Revolution in Poetic Language, which picks up some of these themes. Remember, she's Bulgarian. Yeah. Okay, avant-garde Leninism, which I love very much. I think that's something that we should go back and recapture and rethink, and Revolution of Truth. So the Phantom of Formalism, I think this is the beginning of the end of this, and then he gets into, you can look at the I'm sure the footnotes are. So this is the first 100 and something pages of the book. We just scanned really quickly, but I think we got some of the crucial ideas. And now you can see some of the constructionist works, right? Some of the things they do in between. And here it is, Lenin's language. Mayakovsky, Shklovsky, Eichenbaum, Yubinsky, Yakubinsky, Tinyayov, Boris Kazansky, and Boris Tomaszewski, right? These are all masterminds. I mean, really, in a way. Great chess players with literature. I mean, big time. Yeah. And then translated by Thomas Campbell. So don't merchandise Lenin. Can you imagine? Don't commodify Lenin. This was a cult in the 20s. Don't make him into a commodity. Yeah. Busts of Lenin, right? Places, patinated bronze, marble, and granite, life-sized and double-sized, reproduced from the sculptor, etc., for sale by the president. So he goes on. We oppose this, right? Little print, right? We agree with the workers of the Kazan Railroad, etc. So Mayakovsky, this is an avant-garde, kind of screened, right, in a way. So it's wonderful. Yeah. Don't crank out Lenin's. See, sure, learn from Lenin, but don't canonize him. Don't canonize him. Don't create a cult around a man who fought cults his whole life. Don't sell the objects of this cult. Right? It's great. It's
brilliant.
Yeah. Very good. So that's
Yeah.
Mayakovsky. Then Lenin is decolonizer. Yeah, the weeks since Lenin's death have been weeks of renaming. I like this very much. Shklovsky, of course, right? All the factories and institutions of higher learning have wanted to attach Lenin's name to the moniker of these collectives, right? Right. Let us try to understand the effects of renaming. What does it mean to rename? Right? Renaming Bolsheviks as the communists has a separate objective. So very good. You begin to see how these people are actually thinking, reconstructing, if you will, of an extremely creative, radical era. And this is the radical imagination, for
Yeah.
lack of a better thing, at work. Big time. Big time.
There's a giant sculpture of Lenin just out of a small community in near Seattle
Yes.
that had an enormous, I don't know, bronze or whatever. It looks bronze, but maybe not
Right.
heavy. But it's been splattered with
Yeah.
paint.
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Typical.
typical, absolutely.
Typical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so you get the gist, right? And I'll send you the entire document. I think it's close to 600 pages. I don't
That would
expect
be
you. I
wonderful.
should give you
Yeah.
assignments to have it read by the next session, and we
Yes.
can discuss it anyway. Yeah, be a good old Soviet hammering the.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how to philosophize with the hammer and use the sickle, if you don't use the hammer well on the text, right? So I kind of like this. Yeah. So anyway, you got the idea. I'm gonna send it to you, all of you, tonight. Yeah, I'll send
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Michael.
This
Michael, I
morning.
just looked at the time and I have to be somewhere else by 1 o'clock.
No,
It's the
no
middle of the
problem,
day
Carol.
here.
No,
I'm
no
really
problem at
sorry for
all. I,
you.
I, I've just, I wanted to recapitulate tonight,
Yeah.
maybe take a little bit of a break, from
Yeah.
this, in a sense, and then I would start again very soon, with, the existential thing, and figure out a syllabas for this.
I'm
But
looking
please
forward to
feel
that.
free. What's that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I'm looking forward to the
Okay.
existential. I've got
Yeah.
a book way up on the top shelf called Existence, which was a collection of existential psychotherapy from the mid
Oh,
60s.
edited by Rollo May and
That's
yeah,
one. Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah, very good
it's
book.
got
Yeah.
lots of case studies in it. And I
Yes,
remember it
absolutely. Yeah,
being very,
yeah,
very
yeah,
important
yeah,
in
yeah.
my youth.
Right.
Thank
Right.
you so much,
And
Michael.
thank you. Thank you. I'll
Yeah.
see you soon. I mean,
See you
maybe we can
soon.
have one
Yeah.
more session. I'll see how I'm doing. I'm just
Okay.
overly busy, and et cetera. And I think we've, talked a lot. Yeah. So what
Yeah.
did
Thank
Ezra
you.
put in the file? Okay. So thank you, Ezra. What did he put in the file though? In the chat. He put a file? Oh yeah, good. He did the boy Nick. Okay,
He's
yeah, he
already done it.
put the document for you already. He
Thank
found
you.
it.
Right.
Great. Thank you so
Ah,
much.
great.
You saved me some labor, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Thank
Good
you.
night,
See you later.
everyone.
good.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Take care, Leslie. Yeah, good. Thank you, Ezra, for that. And I'll see you guys soon. I hope. Yeah. Be well. Okay. Stay well. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. Okay. Phil. Yeah. Thank you again, Ezra. Yeah. Let me just see if I can get Phil. Phil? Let's do whatever. Yeah. Cool.
Sorry, Michael.
Oh, it's okay, Phil. I was just going to write you a message. Everybody, Beryl had to be at the meeting, and Leslie too, and Ezra sent in the chat if you want the book I was quoting from, The Coiled Spring, Lenin's Languages, and all the Russian futurists and practical reasoning versus poetic reasoning,
Did
except
you?
in the tradition. It's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Oh yeah, I see it. Okay.
Tegin Boydnik. He
Yeah,
wrote.
no, it really looks interesting.
It's big time interesting. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So, you have meetings with some of your comrades there? Or?
Yeah. This is Savannah. This is
Hi, Savannah, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Michael, so
Yeah,
great to see
good,
you all dinner.
good.
We got lost in conversation about a film
No,
called
no problem at all. Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
she just watched Battleship Potemkin.
It was my second.
Oh, you just did an Eisenstein film. Yeah, one of his greats. Yeah, definitely.
I did. We were
Good,
we were
cool.
talking about because I'm reading a book called Yiddish Land about
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay,
and
good.
it was interesting to watch that scene because there's a scene where a reactionary man is like amongst the revolutionaries and he screams kill the Jews and they all turn.
Right. That's right.
Reading Yiddish Land is so interesting because it
Right.
does reflect where it was like
Yeah.
the Soviet Union was trying to
Right.
integrate in the 20s.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, 3/4, it was a Jewish conspiracy, Bolshevism, as you know. I'm just kidding, of course.
Oh no, I just find the book likes to joke about that, but in actuality, it's very interesting to see.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Very many. So I don't want to.
Okay, no.
Yeah. Speaking of Jews, just to give you an idea, the woman who taught German in New Orleans, I'm from New Orleans, and it was at the best public high school in New Orleans, Benjamin Franklin, and they had a German teacher. Her last name was Braunstein. She was Trotsky's, a niece. So and I heard well, I never had her. I heard about her, but big time thing. Yeah, a lot of people ended up interesting people ended up in New Orleans back in the day. Yeah, a good subject for a PhD thesis.
Yeah.
Word to your friends. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a hell of a family connection. And
yes. Miss Bronstein. Everybody was afraid of her. Very much the heart disciplinarian, but very good with the German language. Yeah. So, anyway, yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm actually reading the Isaac Deutscher
Stalin or Trotsky?
Trotsky.
Okay.
Just
3 volumes, right? The 3.
Yeah, I'm reading the first just because I've got so many I've been having problems with a number of Trotskyists and I'm trying to understand them.
Okay, fair enough. Most Trotskyists don't know Trotsky at all. That's part of the problem.
What?
Most Trotskyists don't know Trotsky at all. They don't know the depth of the knowledge.
Right.
They don't know literature and revolution. They don't know the Kronstadt rebellion and the issues around that. There are many, many levels to all of this, and this is a problem. This name calling, this labeling, and then thinking you're so much a part of factions. Anyway, it's just my, my spiel on this.
Yeah. No, there's incredible sectarianism in the Trotskyist movement.
Yeah, good. So I'll let you get back to your meeting and your comrades there and enjoy, Phil. It's good to see you, of course. We missed you last week. I hope you got my message. Yeah.
Well, it was actually the court ruled in the Haitians' favor. So they
Excellent. Great to know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So they're not being deported yet.
No.
But I'll hold them to account the next time.
Yes, do that. Thank you. That's good. That's what we need. That. Yeah. We need that. Yeah. Right.
He knows I will.
Okay, very good. Okay, Phil, be well, okay? Nice to meet you.
Okay, I'll see you.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.